Today, we're digging into a Supreme Court case that, on the surface, seems to be about craft stores and contraception. But as we're going to see, it's really about something way deeper. How, in modern America, our politics and our most fundamental beliefs are starting to look like the exact same thing. So let's just jump right in with this question from journalist Michael Hiltzik. I mean, it really gets to the absolute heart of the landmark 2014 Supreme Court case Burwell versus Hobby Lobby. It's a question that forces us to ask, where does a sincere faith end? And where does political maneuvering begin? Is there even a line anymore? All right, so the setup for this whole puzzle was, pretty straightforward. On one side, you had the Affordable Care Act. You probably know it as Obamacare. And among many, many other things, it required most employers to provide health insurance that covered preventive care for women, which included all FDA-approved forms of contraception at no extra cost. And on the other side, well, you had the Green family. They're the devout Christian owners of the craft store giant Hobby Lobby. And they argued that this government mandate forced them to violate their religious beliefs. But here's the key thing. Their objection wasn't to all contraception. Nope. It was to 4 very specific types they believed could act as abortifacients. Basically, that they could prevent a fertilized egg from implanting in the uterus. And this belief, it wasn't just a gut feeling. It was based on a very specific step-by-step line of reasoning. Okay, let's just break this down for a second because for their argument to work, you had to accept every single one of these points. Step 1, abortion is morally wrong. Pretty straightforward. Step 2, that preventing a fertilized egg from implanting is a form of abortion. Now, this is a specific theological view, not the medical definition of pregnancy. Step 3, that certain contraceptives like Plan B or IUDs can do this. And then finally, the linchpin, step 4, that by simply providing an insurance plan that covers these items, they would become morally complicit. Basically, they'd have a hand in that act of abortion. So the Supreme Court, in a really close 5-4 decision, actually sided with Hobby Lobby. They ruled that yes, for-profit companies can have religious objections. But oh man, the debate was far from over. Almost immediately, critics started to ask some really tough questions about how sincere this religious claim actually was. The whole thing started to boil down to this one question. Was this lawsuit truly born from a deeply held, consistent religious conviction, or was there something else going on? So people started digging, and they found a couple of pretty puzzling inconsistencies that, for them, seemed to weaken the company's case. And this is where the story gets really complicated. So the claim was this unwavering religious belief, but critics immediately pointed to some, well, pretty direct contradictions. First off, Hobby Lobby's own employee health plan had, up until the lawsuit, covered the very same emergency contraceptives they were now objecting to. And maybe even more pointedly, the company's 401k retirement plan had invested millions in mutual funds that included the manufacturers of these exact contraceptives and other abortion-related drugs. So, for these critics, the conclusion was obvious, right? This wasn't really about faith. This was about politics. It was just a way for a conservative company to fight a law passed by a Democratic president they didn't like. But what if it's not that simple? What if we're all asking the wrong question here? What if the very distinction between a political belief and a religious one has started to just disappear? This is where legal scholar Mark Sotta comes in, with a really fascinating alternative explanation. He basically suggests that what happened with Hobby Lobby is impossible to understand without looking at 3 really powerful social forces that are fundamentally reshaping American society and our identities along with it. Okay, so the first force is something called political sectarianism. This is when politics stops being about disagreeing on policy and turns into this moral battle of us versus them. The other side isn't just wrong, they're seen as different, alien, even fundamentally immoral. All of a sudden, political losses start to feel like threats to your very existence. And this sectarianism gets supercharged by the second force, negative partisanship. Get this, research shows that for a whole lot of Americans today, political loyalty isn't about loving your own party. It's about fearing and even hating the other party. Dislike for the opposition is a way more powerful motivator than affection for your own side. And all of that brings us to the really crucial point, the third and maybe most important concept here, the creation of what are called partisan mega-identities. This is what happens when all of a person's different identities, all the things that make you you, they all start to stack up and fuse together into one. So think about it like this. Instead of someone having separate identities, like I'm a Christian over here, I'm a Republican over there, I'm white, I'm a conservative, all of those different labels just merge, they fuse into one single unified mega-identity. They become socially and symbolically inseparable. To be one is to be all the others. And when these identities fuse together, the boundaries just dissolve. A political law like the Affordable Care Act, something passed by the other side, is no longer just a policy disagreement. No, it's perceived as an attack on your political party, which feels like an attack on your religious faith, which then feels like an attack on your entire way of life. Suddenly, the line between a sincere religious belief and a political position becomes almost impossible to even see, let alone draw. Now, this whole idea of politics taking on the features of faith, it's not totally new. Historians and sociologists have been studying this kind of thing for a long, long time, and they have a specific term for it. They call it a political religion. And it's basically when a secular ideology, think fascism or communism, starts to function just like a religion. It gives people a sense of meaning, it has sacred symbols, it demands absolute loyalty, and it sacralizes politics itself, elevating the party or the state or its leaders to an almost divine status. And the parallels between these systems are frankly striking. Both have a source of ultimate loyalty, God or the state. Both have sacred texts, scripture or a political manifesto. Both have revered leaders, and both promise some form of salvation, one in the next world and the other in a perfect paradise created right here on earth. And look, this is not just a theory. We've seen it happen again and again throughout history. During the French Revolution, radicals literally tried to replace Catholicism with the cult of the supreme being. In the 1920s, Italian fascism explicitly tried to make the state sacred. And by the 1930s, many were describing Soviet communism as a new secular faith with its own dogmas and its own saints. Okay, so what does this all mean? How does this idea of mega-identities and these historical political religions, how does that bring us back to the Hobby Lobby case and maybe, more importantly, back to the world that you and I are living in today? Well, the consequences are profound, and they help explain so much of the intense polarization that we see all around us. When politics becomes your religion, simple policy debates start to feel like existential threats to your very being. Compromise with the other side, that's not a necessary part of democracy, it's a moral failure. It's a betrayal of the faith. And your opponents aren't just people you disagree with, they are seen as fundamentally wicked. So, if we look back at the Hobby Lobby case through this lens, the puzzle really changes. Those inconsistencies, the prior insurance coverage, the 401k investments, maybe they're not evidence of hypocrisy or insincerity. Maybe instead, they're evidence of a religious conviction that was newly formed or at least intensified because of the political fight over Obamacare. The question may not be whether the Greens were sincere, but what sincerity even means when your faith and your politics have become one and the same. And that leaves all of us with a final and really deeply challenging question. In a world of mega-identities, where a political party can become a church and a policy debate can become a holy war, how do we navigate this new landscape? How can a society protect genuine religious freedom without just giving a free pass to a political agenda that's just dressed up in the language of faith?